Welcome back after the break. You're watching Indus News and I'm Fiza Jamal bringing you stories in detail. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says Pakistan backs Afghan peace process on a principle of non-interference. He was speaking to the Lahore Conference for Afghan Peace, which is being held at the Hill Resort of Bourbon. The Foreign Minister said a common enemy has harmed relations between Kabul and Islamabad. He said the Afghan crisis badly affected Pakistan and people need to end the blame game. Over 50 leaders representing 18 political parties, including Bulletin Hikmatyar and Ustad Atanur, are attending. Afghan Aman Jirga Chief Karim Khalili and Uzbek leader Rashid Dostum are also taking part in the talks. The conference will review Afghan security, its future, and repatriation of Afghan refugees from Pakistan. Detailed discussions on trade, communication, health, and other sectors will be included. Over in Afghanistan, at least 21 insurgents and 2 security personnel have been killed in the country's latest clashes. Officials say insurgents were killed in ground operations and air strikes in Kapisa and Kandahar provinces. 5 Taliban fighters and 5 security personnel were wounded in the operations. Southeast Asian leaders have gathered in Thailand to discuss a Chinese-drafted free trade deal. The 34th summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations is taking place in Bangkok. The ASEAN foreign ministers have met ahead of the summit. The theme for this year's summit is advancing partnerships for sustainability. Up for discussion will be the dispute over the South China Sea, Myanmar's treatment of Rohingya Muslims, and marine pollution. The summit brings together leaders from Cambodia, Indonesia, and the Philippines, among others. For more on this, we are joined by Dr. P.T. Srisangnam, Assistant Professor at Chulalongkorn University. Thank you for your time. So firstly, this year's ASEAN summit comes amid an escalating trade war between the U.S. and China. Do ASEAN member nations stand to gain or lose because of the standoff between the world's 2 largest economies?
I think ASEAN is very, very important because among the global strategies of Indo-Pacific, right? Geographical locations of ASEAN, it's located between that 2 oceans, Indian Oceans and Pacific Oceans. But not only the geographical significance, but most important thing right now is about geopolitics and geoeconomics. Since the China, like you already said, it's expand its economic influence from the north, right? Try very hard to connect Africa continent, Asia continent, and Europe in order to allow China to access to the new market and new source of natural resources as well as labor pool of labor via the global project so-called Belt and Road Initiative. And of course, via these tools, China tends to be the #1 or the countries that can set up the global order. Hence, the US, who used to be the #1 in this global orders, cannot allow it to happen. That's why we see US try so hard to contain this influence expansions of China. That's why in terms of geopolitics and geoeconomics, ASEAN not only located between Indo and Pacific, but also located between China influence and US influence as well.
Right, and Dr. P.T., that's not the only crisis on table because tensions between the U.S. and China are again building over Taiwan and the South China Sea territorial dispute. How do you expect ASEAN leaders to respond to this?
I don't think we put the agendas of South China Sea into this ASEAN summit this year, but we did talk a lot about Indo-Pacific outlook because right now the conflict between ASEAN members and China on the issues of South China Sea seems to be, cooling down. There will be only Vietnam that still have a little bit conflict with China in this area, but it seems like for the Philippines, who used to, when they changed the president from Benigno Aquino to Duterte, the situation seems to be better when Duterte agree with China that it would be better if both of them, utilize the natural resources in this area together instead of, competing each other.
And Dr. PT, when it comes to the discussion of Myanmar's treatment of Rohingya Muslims, if we relate to the last year's ASEAN summit, Malaysia's Prime Minister Dr. Mahathir Mohamad castigated Myanmar over human rights abuses against Rohingya Muslims. Do you expect the issue to figure prominently during this weekend summit? ASEAN stayed together for 52 years because we have one principle, with it we will not interfere our neighboring domestic affairs. But this is not a fixed rule. Sometimes if the leaders of states of the country with the problems invite or ask ASEAN for help or ask ASEAN for cooperation to find a solution for that issues, we help each other. For example, during the 90s, President Wahid of Indonesia asked ASEAN leaders to come up with a solution for Timor. And of course, during the 90s tornado that collapsed the southern part of Myanmar, Myanmar leaders, ASEAN secretary, and of course, leaders of ASEAN helping each other, and the situations in lower Myanmar seems to be better after that tornado 90s. But for the issues of Rohingya or Bengali, this is the very, very untouchable area of ASEAN. And of course, since Myanmar leaders will not ask for the cooperations or help from ASEAN, so we cannot touch on these issues. But we can expect that even we cannot put it in the main agendas for summit. But normally the leaders always talk on these serious issues, but unofficially we call it ASEAN way. Maybe they have a sideline meeting during lunch break, sideline meeting during coffee breaks. But at least I think the times is very, very good for ASEAN to take it serious about these issues. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. PT. That was Dr. PT Sri Sangnam, Assistant Professor at Chulalongkorn University. Moving on, President Donald Trump says he has blocked planned U.S. military strikes against Iran in response to the shooting down of a spy drone. President Trump said in a series of tweets he aborted the air raids 10 minutes before the planned strikes on 3 different sites in Iran. Trump said he changed his mind when he was told 150 Iranians would be killed in the attack. The U.S. president warned Iran would face obliteration if conflict broke out. He said the U.S. is in no hurry to attack Iran because more sanctions have been imposed. He added Iran would not be allowed to obtain nuclear weapons. Foreign Minister Javad Zarif says Iran has retrieved parts of the U.S. military drone from its territorial waters. For more on this, we are joined by Hamid Reza Gholamzadeh, who is a political analyst in Tehran. Well, we are joined by Hamid Reza Gholamzadeh, who is a political analyst in Tehran. Well, Mr. Gholamzadeh, why did President Donald Trump reverse the order of striking Iran?
First of all, thank you very much for having me. Actually, it seems to me that it is more a bluff rather than a true decision made by President Trump, because he had said that just 10 minutes before the attack, I thought that when the interviewer actually asked him, so you mean that planes were on the air and everything was ready? He says, no, not that ready we were for an attack. So if you want to attack somewhere in 10 minutes, you at least need to have some fighter jets on air. And moreover, he says that because of 150 civilian lives that were in danger, he decided to cancel the attack. So it seems that for a country which has killed thousands and thousands of people in different countries, in different regions, 150 is not a good number, enough number to stop an attack. The point is that the Americans seem to understand that Iran had the right actually to attack the drone because it was in over its airspace. And because of that, they don't have enough evidence and enough reasons to counterattack. So because of that, they are trying just to justify their inaction and their retaliation that they are not showing.
Right. And Mr. Ghulamzadeh, what do you make of the accusation made by Donald Trump about attacks on the oil tankers?
That's a similar case because we are in a post-truth era, and with President Trump in office, we have it intensified that they are trying to sell their own narratives as realities and as truth to the public opinion. They just claim that Iran is responsible for the tanker attack. One, they didn't provide any evidence, and we have seen that many countries, like for example Germany, Japan, and many other countries, have casted doubt about the evidence asked the United States to provide real evidence that Iran was involved, and they have failed to do that, of course, because it seems that it was not true at all. So the claims that the Americans are raising against Iran are all based on no evidence. And we saw that in this recent case, Iran provided all the coordinates of GPS coordinates for the location, the remains of the drone, and all the evidence that was possible was given to them. The routes that the drone had flown. And on the other side, you cannot see any accurate information being distributed by Americans.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Ghulamzadeh, for your time. That was analyst Hamid Raza Ghulamzadeh joining us from Tehran. Moving on, the United States is to increase its deportations of asylum seekers back to Mexico and Cuba. The operation against illegal migrants will be launched on Sunday, targeting 2,000 families in 10 U.S. cities. Advocates for migrants say they are concerned asylum seekers have little access to legal counsel. They could be sent to Mexican border cities, which have some of the highest homicide rates in the world. The Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Mark Morgan, says families already sent a removal order will be deported first. The Trump administration plans to expand the program to remove frivolous asylum claims. The measures are being challenged in the courts. At least 9 people have been killed when a twin-engine aircraft crashed on Hawaii Island. The crash occurred near Dillingham Airfield on the north shore of Oahu. The Hawaii Department of Transportation said 9 people were on board and there are no survivors. Rescue workers said they found the ruins of plane fully engulfed in flames when they arrived. It's time for us to take a short break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. After the break, we'll move on to our next story. Russia has temporarily banned its airlines from flying to Georgia after unrest in the country. The ban comes after 240 people were hurt in protests against the appearance of a Russian MP in Georgia's parliament. Moscow is advising Russian travel agencies to suspend all tours to neighboring Georgia. Tensions between the countries remain high 11 years after fighting a war over the disputed South Ossetia region. Georgian President Salome Zurabishvili earlier blamed Moscow for the recent violence. Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev is calling the allegation a distortion of reality. The head of Georgia's parliament, Irakli Kobakhidze, has resigned after the police crackdown on the protests. Opposition leaders say they will hold demonstrations until parliament is dissolved and snap elections are called. Sri Lanka has extended the state of emergency imposed after the Easter Sunday attacks for at least another month. President Maithripala Sirisena says he invoked the provisions of the Public Security Act in response to the ongoing emergency. The tough laws grant sweeping powers to police and security forces to arrest and detain suspects. The measures were due to expire today. Sirisena has previously said the security situation is back to normal. At least 81 Palestinians have been wounded by Israeli forces firing rubber-coated steel bullets at protesters on the Gaza border. Hundreds of protesters took part in the weekly Great March of Return demonstration. The recurring demonstrations aim to end Israel's blockade of the Gaza Strip. More than 300 Palestinians have been killed and over 23,000 others injured by Israeli forces since start of protests in March last year. Mauritanians are taking part in the country's presidential elections. Voters are choosing between 6 candidates wanting to succeed President Mohamed Ould Abdel Aziz. The leading contender is Mohamed Ould Ghazouani, a close associate of President Aziz and a former defense minister. President Aziz is standing down after almost 10 years in power because of constitutional term restrictions. Official figures say at least 1.5 million Mauritanians are eligible to vote. If there is no outright winner in today's ballot, a runoff will be held on July the 6th. Mauritania faces challenges from armed groups and underdevelopment. It has never had a democratic transfer of power since independence from France in 1960. China says Beijing will firmly support North Korea to politically resolve the nuclear issue. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Liu Kang says during President Xi Jinping's visit to North Korea, both sides discussed issues of common concern. Liu says the neighboring states have set course to enhance bilateral ties to create regional peace. He says China is willing to provide assistance to North Korea in security and development. The Chinese president has officially visited North Korea for the first time since 2005. In Britain, junior Foreign Minister Mark Field has been suspended after attacking a female protester. British Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt says Field recognized he had overreacted by grabbing a female protester around her neck. It happened when climate change demonstrators interrupted a high-profile speech by Finance Minister Philip Hammond. He was addressing leaders of the UK's financial services industry. Hunt says Field has issued an apology and the incident will be resolved by an independent cabinet office inquiry. A hungry, shiny black beetle is chewing its way through swaths of forest in northern Greece. The pest has already bitten through at least 100,000 trees. There's more food for thought in this report.
Shiny black beetles have created a huge environmental challenge for Greece. The insects are destroying the country's woodland at a rapid pace. The green pine forests are fast turning brown. Many factors, including protracted periods of drought in the summer months, resulted in low vitality of the trees. Experts said the attack is uncontrollable at the moment.
The problem is unfortunately very big at the moment because the insect is moving almost uncontrollably. We have to take the appropriate measures with precision logging to stop its momentum.
Environment specialists said that authorities must remove dead and infected trees to mitigate the effects.
The way to deal with it is the removal of dead and primarily the infected trees because it remains there. The insect has already left the dead trees, so we must remove the infected ones so that no more new insects appear.
The beetle is known to exist in Greece since the 1970s, but no serious effort was made to eliminate.
Let's take you to the world of business, where in the struggle between the world's two biggest economies, the US has blacklisted another 5 Chinese tech companies, preventing them from buying US-made chips and components. The US Commerce Department says the company's activities pose a national security threat. The stocks of US chip makers fell in response to the announcement. In a legal development, the Chinese tech giant Huawei has filed a lawsuit against the Commerce Department over the seizure of its equipment. Washington says the Chinese company's telecommunications kit could be used for spying by Beijing. China, however, denies the allegations. And now we'll give you a quick look at what the weather is looking like today around the globe. These are all the stories in detail we have for you this hour. You can follow up on all of our main stories. You'll find them online at indus.news.